All right, welcome back to another live episode of Theory Throwdown on the Dynasty Theory YouTube channel. Tonight, and Mitch and Dan, they're both repping their Scott Fishbowl shirts. And I didn't get the memo. We talked about this on our weekly show. You two have to keep me in the loop. But tonight, we have a battle. Mitch, you are pro Miles Sanders tonight. And Dan, you are bringing to the table Derrick Henry. And Mitch, I mentioned this on the weekly show, but I think a lot of people were concerned last week when you didn't show up to our show. They said that you were scared because, well, the comments on the YouTube channel, they have not been pro Mitch.
Yeah, I'm definitely 0-2 right now. Dan is killing me, and this is the week that I'm gonna make up for it. First week was definitely gonna be rough. Last week was, I still can't believe people like Drew Lock, but I'm willing to accept that defeat. This week, if I fail, it's all on me.
I never knew there were so many Broncos fans. Mitch was getting hammered, absolutely hammered, but he is bouncing back. He is showing his resiliency. And like I said tonight, Mitch, you are going to make the case for Miles Sanders. Get us started. Why do you prefer Miles Sanders in Dynasty over Derrick Henry?
Well, first, I'll just break down Miles Sanders. He's 23. He still has another 3 years underneath that rookie deal. He's already in that really good offense. Has Carson Wentz next to him. They upgraded the wide receiver positions. They played that 12 personnel, and 12 personnel for running backs is extremely good because they always have that extra really good blocker. Instead of having a slot wide receiver out there trying to block a linebacker, you have the extra tight end out there to do it. But as much as I want to talk about everyone else in the offense, Miles Sanders is a back who can do everything. He is a great receiving back, as we saw in that Redskins game last year. I mean, that catch at the end of the game in the third quarter was awesome. And he runs really well in between the tackles. He has a lot of speed to run the wheel routes if he needs to. His skill set is so perfect for today's game and the way that Doug Peterson is willing to use him now, showing, because the big issue that we had was before week 9, he didn't have a game with more than 6 touches if you don't count the kick returns and punt returns. But as soon as Jordan Howard got injured, he averaged 19 points a game after that point. And this is something that we end up seeing with a lot of rookie running backs. We saw this with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb wasn't seeing the field. Then all of a sudden, the people in front of him get moved, and now he's been the starter for the last 2 years for him. And I think moving forward, Miles Sanders is going to be that guy for the Eagles, and I'm willing to take him up to running back 7, running back 8 in startups right now.
All right, so looking at Miles Sanders before Dan jumps in to really make the case for Derrick Henry, if you look at Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, Miles Sanders is running back 9. A little different compared to his Dynasty ADP of running back 11. But as we've done in previous shows, I'm going to bring up some talking points or concerns that people might have, Mitch. So Philadelphia and Doug Peterson, they've always shown that they want to employ the committee approach. That's going to be a big knock. They're talking about they wanted to bring in Devontae Freeman, Carlos Hyde, even though Carlos Hyde, he's signed with Seattle at this point. But they're always talking about bringing another running back in because they want to run that committee-style backfield. What do you have to say to that to people that are going to use that against Miles Sanders?
I think that's without a doubt it's going to happen. I mean, that's already into his cost. He's running back 9 because they're going to end up bringing, not Carlos Hyde at this point, but maybe they bring in Freeman or someone like that. Someone else is going to come in, and they're going to give him work as well. But if that didn't happen, Miles Sanders would be a top 5 back in the league right now. But since we have to worry about someone else coming in and getting some rushing share, because no one's going to come in and take receiving share away from Miles Sanders. That's just something that's not going to happen. But someone could come in and get 125 carries. That will limit Miles Sanders' ceiling of being, the RB1 in the league. But as far as running back by committee, I think it's already into his value to begin with, because if there wasn't that worry, he'd be going a lot higher.
Now, is there a concern that's baked into his price? Yes, but he really didn't shine until Jordan Howard went down, just like you mentioned already. Mm-hmm. And if you look at his splits with Jordan Howard in versus Jordan Howard out, it was 10 games with Jordan Howard in the split, 6 games out. Rushing attempts for Miles Sanders almost doubled. Rushing yards almost doubled. touchdowns, it tripled. It was not significant, but it tripled. What's the next one here? Targets almost doubled. So there are clear splits here whenever Jordan Howard was in the lineup versus when he was out. So if they do bring in somebody else and there was that committee approach, you don't think that significantly hinders his upside in that offense?
I don't think so, because I think he's gone out and proved that he could be that guy. Now, there's one thing with a rookie to where they're splitting touches and they don't show anything. We've seen that time and time again, to where the veteran just keeps getting time over him. But once you get a guy like Miles Sanders and he's proven what he can do, this isn't a Darrell Henderson situation to where he can never be anything. We've seen Miles Sanders already be something. We've seen he could be an elite back in this league. And so that worry isn't there for me at all with him.
All right, Dan, it's your time to shine. So Derrick Henry, Fantasy Pros consensus ranking, Dynasty running back 11, ADP running back 13. Make your case for Derrick Henry. Why should the listeners be targeting him instead of Miles Sanders?
First, let's call him King Henry. All right. This is King Henry tonight versus the Miles Sanders hype machine. Yes, I like Miles Sanders. Our listeners like Miles Sanders. He's a good player. I would like him on my team, but I would love King Henry on my team. All right. From the great author, Jim Collins, we're going from good to great here. And I want great, not good. Miles Sanders is good. King Henry is great. All right. We want to talk about some rankings. ESPN consensus there has King Henry 6th and Miles Sanders 14th. All right. You know, those guys, Matthew Berry, Field Yates, Stephania Bell, they're pretty good. I know we're talking Dynasty. So Mike Clay, who we had on our show, all right, we all have a mad respect for Mike Clay. His Dynasty rankings has King Henry 15th and Miles Sanders 28th overall, all right? So 15th versus 28th. So Mike Clay, Dynasty Mike Clay, sees the greatness of King Henry. Now, I also want to win now. I talked about that. The Pro Football Focus, who I'll reference sometimes, their consensus, along with Jay Ratcliffe, projects King Henry 6th and Sanders 10th. All right, so just coming back with a little bit of ranking talk there. But then overall talent, guys, 6'3", 247 pounds, 4'5", 40 out of Alabama. That is some elite pedigree there versus the 5'11", 215 Miles Sanders. I'm 5'11" too, all right? I'd rather tackle me than King Henry. So get out of the way for King Henry. You got an elite back at an elite speed. I think he's a generational guy there. Then we talk offensive style, all right? The Titans have built this offense around King Henry and his 16 touchdowns, while Miles Sanders is a piece of the Philadelphia pie, a piece of it. All right, there are a lot of weapons there. So I'm going to take the guy whose offense is built around him and is an elite talent. Concerns, I get it with the 18 receptions for 202 yards. We would like some more, okay? But he makes up with it with 303 touches, 1,540 yards rushing, 5.1 yard a carry, a long of 74, and he's had multiple long carries, 16 touchdowns, 73 first downs, and now there's no Dion Lewis, so there's a chance even those catches take a little small spike to the 25, 30 range, with, in this case, would be really nice. So to me, it is good to great, a hamburger versus steak, an occasional Pro Bowler in Sanders versus a generational talent in King Henry. So it's King Henry for me, gentlemen.
All right, Mitch, hold off there. Hold off. So some of the things that people might bring up, Dan, and you kind of touched on it already, but King Henry, as you want him to be referred to,
Thank you.
Or referred as, he's not utilized in the passing game. Is that a concern?
It's not because of all the volume. I mean, we're looking for touches in fantasy football. He makes that up with touchdowns. He makes that up in other ways. And I think with Dion Lewis, there's an opportunity to get just enough more to spike him even more and make him just a solid pick. I just think he's a rock star. Give me the bell cow back. I want bell cow back potential in fantasy football.
In 2019, this Tennessee offense was one of the most efficient offenses we have ever seen in the red zone. And we always talk about regression. And I think at times it's overblown and overstated. But do you think there's any concern with regression from the offense as a whole, especially with how efficient they were in 2019?
I'll probably go into this a little bit more in my round two rebuttal, but I think there's still more ceiling for this Titans offense here. I mean, it was Mariota struggling, and it wasn't Tannehill out of the gates. So I think now you get a full season of Tannehill. You get a year 2 of A.J. Brown. I think some of the pressure is going to come off them. Corey Davis trying to prove himself in a free agent year. It's free Jonnu Smith time. So I think that takes a little bit of pressure. I think there's more left in that Titans offense.
And the last item of concern that people are going to bring up, the contract situation. Derrick Henry is playing on the franchise tag. Is there any concern? Mitch brought up with Miles Sanders. He still has 3 years left on that rookie deal. Is there any concern with Derrick Henry's contract situation as we are talking about Dynasty here on the Dynasty Theory YouTube channel?
You see this guy behind me here? He's in a similar situation, Mr. Prescott. And the Cowboys and the Titans are openly saying, we want King Henry, we want Dak Prescott. They are going to re-sign them. If they play on a franchise contract for 1 year, that's fine. They're still playing. They're in the long-term plans. No concern at all.
All right.
They'll get it done.
All right, we're going to bounce over to Mitch. Make your case against Derrick Henry. Bash the king.
So it's bashing the king time. I like this. So one thing we have to remember with the Titans is their offensive line was so good last year. They lost Jack Conklin. Losing Jack Conklin is huge. He is one of the best tackles in the league. I don't know if there's 5 tackles in the league that are better than Jack Conklin. But just skipping over that, we talked about the targets for Derrick Henry. So he had, 18 catches over the whole year? And you're like, all right, that's fine. They did pretty well without him, right? Going into the playoffs where they really needed him, to where they wanted to make the Super Bowl, he had 5 catches over 3 games for 21 yards. And as we know in fantasy football, targets are worth more than carries. The more targets you get, the more points you score. We would rather have someone get 300 targets than 300 carries. Of course, it's not going to happen, but that's just how the numbers break down. And so luckily enough for us, if you will listen to this week's May 26th podcast, you can listen to Dan himself say, I like Miles Sanders in the second round, and I don't like Josh Jacobs. And the reason for that was Josh Jacobs doesn't get receiving work, and Miles Sanders does. And that was with Miles Sanders being taken at RB8. And that's exactly from Dan. But to even go further into it, with Derrick Henry, he's been a touchdown machine the last 2 years. He's had 12 touchdowns in 2018, 16 in 2019, which is unbelievable. What's the one thing we know about touchdowns? They're hardly ever repeatable. It's not something you can look at every year and be like, hey, this guy is going to overshoot his touchdown projection by 12, 6. What happens if he gets 10 in a year? If he got 10 instead of 16 last year, that's 36 less points than what he got. It's with Derrick Henry, you are hoping for touchdowns because you cannot count on PPR points at all. You have to hope that he gets 30 rushes a game and he's getting touchdowns each game. There's going to be games to where he gets 24 yards total. And that's it. That's what happens in the NFL when you have a running back that doesn't get receiving work if they fall behind early. It's something that happened even last year. Dad's saying, no, cut it off. But guess what? It happened twice last year to where he got under 30 total yards. That's something you have to worry. You don't have to worry about that with Miles Sanders because he could just catch a ball for 30 yards on the last play of the game. Guess one thing that's never going to happen for Derrick Henry.
All right, so that is Mitch's case against Derrick Henry. Dan, over to you. Make your case against Miles Sanders.
Whew, man. Yeah, talk about not being utilized in the pass game. Sanders isn't even utilized in the red zone. Boston Scott stole work from Miles Sanders. Who? Boston Scott. You're talking about his 2 off games, Titans. Okay, 2 games where, things didn't quite work out in the Tennessee plan there. Well, there were games where it didn't work out for Miles Sanders, whether it was his fumbling problem, his Jordan Howard problem, his Boston Scott problem. There seems to be a lot of problems where, he's going to have those games as well. And as I mentioned, Deion Lewis is out. He was the guy that they wanted to catch the passes. I think, a couple of if he loses a touchdown or 2 this year, he gets a couple more catches. He's still going to get the volume, and you cannot tackle that guy in the red zone. Cannot. The Tennessee offense is highly efficient. We talk about any concerns. You mentioned them losing Conklin. They added first-round pick and a 6'6", 350-pound masher and tackle Isaiah Wynn out of Georgia. I watched him. He is a run-game masher. Ask DeAndre Swift. He'll tell you. So they've replaced that at a good price. So the salary-wise, it makes a lot of sense and a lot of future there. Dude's a stud, man. He's going to be effective in the run game right away. Philadelphia and Doug Peterson have always employed a committee approach. I don't see that changing. You admitted yourself they're probably going to sign someone. They still have Boston Scott, who fits right in there. Maybe my boy Evander Holyfield's son gets into the mix. We shall see, all right? But again, they discovered Boston Scott. Who's Boston Scott? And let me mention, the Redskins and Cowboys front seven has been bolstered. They are two scary front sevens. Miles Sanders is going to have a lot of trouble at least 4 times during the year finding real estate. So you better hope he's catching passes. And again, he did not shine until Jordan Howard went down. That doesn't really excite me there. And does Jalen Hurts come in there and sneak away a couple of runs as well in that creative Doug Peterson offense?
All right, guys, we've gone through our opening statements. You made your case against the other one's respective running back. Mitch, give us your closing argument, whether this is against Derrick Henry, for Miles Sanders. Wrap it up.
Okay, so I'll wrap this up quick. We want players in the NFC East. It's what we want. Dan said that the Cowboys bolstered their defensive line. Not really. They got someone who was suspended for the last 4 years to come back. When the Redskins are the best defense in that division, and you get to play against the Eagles offense, you get to play against the Giants offense, you get to play against the Cowboys offense, and all of those are going to be really elite offenses. You get someone like Miles Sanders, who's going to be in that Eagles offense, going against those other teams. It's a really easy buy. You look at the AFC South, you have Deshaun Watson. Great, right? Then you have Ryan Tannehill for the Titans, Minshew, and Rivers. Like, none of those offenses are scaring any defensive coordinators at all. Give me the guy in the NFC East who is going to be playing in shootouts every single week in that division.
All right, Mitch, sounds good. Over to you, Dan. Give us your closing argument.
Somehow Mitch forgot about Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe in the interior defensive line there, where, again, there's going to be nowhere for Miles Sanders to run. And he better hope, again, he's getting a lot of catches, and Boston Scott and whoever they sign is not on the field, because, again, it's not going to be as easy as you think. And then from there, you know, we talked about Fantasy Pros rankings a little bit. Have a little fun and say, who should I draft on Fantasy Pros? 58 out of 60 of their rankers selected King Henry. That's 98%. That's pretty high there. And King Henry is a dark horse MVP candidate. Miles Sanders is a no candidate. All right. Again, good player. I did make that mention earlier about taking him over Jacobs, but Jacobs isn't King Henry. Two different situations, two different offenses built differently. Derrick Henry has rare size and quickness, man. Have you ever watched his footwork for his size? Again, he's just phenomenal. King Henry has become a generational talent, guys. Do you want a hamburger or do you want a steak? Do you want good or do you want great? If you want great and you want a steak, King Henry's your guy. My listeners out there, show me some love on this vote. 3-0, baby.
I felt like there was a rhyme there. I felt like you were dropping a verse on us, and Mitch is dying to get another word in, but there is an advantage to going second, I think, in this. And next week, whenever we break down Mecole Hardman and Michael Gallup, and it's going to surprise people, Mitch is going to be defending Michael Gallup in that situation. But then again, Dan did not play basketball against Michael Gallup, so he's going to be going with Mecole Hardman. So as we've talked about in the past, listeners, if you're tuning in live, if you're watching this back on our Dynasty Theory YouTube channel, drop a comment in the chat, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're giving away a free 1-year subscription to Dynasty League Football, and we're choosing the winner from our list of subscribers. Thank you for tuning in to Theory Throwdown on the Dynasty Theory YouTube channel. Stay safe and have a great night.